The focus of this presentation is going to be to help you effectively onboard new users to an existing intranet or existing users to a new functionality on your intranet. We will be talking about mechanisms to provide users ongoing support, training, and so forth. What we will not be talking about is designing your intranet. That's not part of this presentation. A little bit of information about me. My name is Asif Rahmani. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called VisualSP based in Chicago, Illinois. Here's the company. VisualSP is very focused on digital adoption platform for Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365. In fact, now we provide the digital adoption platform for every web application. So anything we can put an overlay directly on top to help you support your users directly on top of your applications. I've been a Microsoft MVP since 2007. I speak at many different conferences, like the ones that you see over here. And in the past, I've written quite a few books also on SharePoint Designer, InfoPath, and other topics before. But now I speak on topics beyond just SharePoint. It's Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, as well as learning solutions specific topics, learning technologies, and so forth. And that's why I presented all these different conferences, which are not just Microsoft specific, but learning specific as well. Here's my LinkedIn profile if you'd like to connect with me, my email address, and our company address, visualsp.com, if you want to find more information about what we do with digital adoption platform and how we can potentially help you and your company. All right, so here's the agenda for what I'll be talking about. First, the history and the current state of SharePoint as it stands today, making sure your intranet will serve your users' needs, onboarding users effectively, of course, setting up contextual experiences. I'll define exactly what those are as well and show you examples. Setting up the support infrastructure for your intranet initiative, and all of this with a bunch of stories that I will share in between as well. To start with an unofficial history of SharePoint, where we have been, where we are. SharePoint 2001, when it first came out, it was not cool. It was just not a good product. That's just what it was. 2003, SharePoint became the first usable product. It became something that we could take a look at and see, yeah, it's going somewhere. 2007 was much better, but still not great. It was okay. 2010 is when SharePoint became SharePoint as we know it today and took off in popularity, and organizations started adopting it and so forth. Now, lots of third-party vendors at that point in 2010 and beyond started building their intranet in a box offerings. Companies like Valo, Powell Software, Unily, Bonsai, etc. SharePoint Online came out in 2016, so quite a few years later. And then once we went from SharePoint on-premises to SharePoint Online, things changed quite a bit. In 2019, not that long ago, I guess, out of the box, SharePoint started becoming really cool again with so much constant innovation that Microsoft was doing. Made you wonder, do you really need the third-party products? So then the intranet and the box vendors, the Valo, Powell Software, and others, they started decreasing in popularity. And then currently, as it stands in 2023, that's when I'm recording right now, Microsoft is continuing to innovate on the SharePoint platform, making it truly one of the best options for running your intranet. And more than 75% of Fortune 500 companies use Microsoft SharePoint, and it's just going to continue going forward. The current use of SharePoint is what I'm going to talk about right now. That has changed a lot from what it used to be. SharePoint used to be the main catch-all for everything, meaning like document libraries, lists, teams, calendars, pages to display content, storing videos, images, form surveys, holding discussions, project management, and more. You just did everything in this thing called SharePoint. This is the on-premises days. Now, since Office 365 came out, lots of these SharePoint specific functions have been decoupled and made into their own separate applications like Microsoft Teams for chats, conversations, meetings, and so forth. You got Microsoft Forms, Calendar is a separate app, Stream for videos, Lists for list functionality, Planner for planning projects and things like that, and so forth. So now the main reason for SharePoint in 2023 is for hosting your intranet site pages, which SharePoint technology is still best for, definitely for news, for information that you're showing to your users. SharePoint still is the backend for documents and list storage. So documents, for example, that are accessed through Microsoft Teams still reside within SharePoint. And also lists that can be accessed through List app or SharePoint, the actual backend of this is still within SharePoint. Yeah, so this is the last point that I was making before. Microsoft Teams backend is still all in SharePoint. So you cannot have Teams without SharePoint. Okay, so if you have a SharePoint-based intranet, now what? Where do you go from here? How do you truly get actual people using the intranet, using all the information that you're putting out and not just having it be wasted? User adoption is everything. That goes for any application, including SharePoint, obviously. You know, this site, obviously, Craigslist, terrible looking site, but think about the adoption. Since it first came out when it disrupted the classified ads back in 1990s, it's been amazing for people to just go and do what exactly they wanted done. It looked the way it did and still does right now with just lots of text and links because it was optimizing for bandwidth. It was optimizing to get people exactly what they needed. And that's exactly what we want to do. I'm not saying, of course, that we make our own SharePoint intranet sites look like this, but you want to optimize for what people want. That's the main thing. At the end of the day, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So let's make sure that the first impression is a good one for people. I would like to relay a story of what happened at University of Michigan when we were planning for an intranet migration. What we did not plan for effectively was user adoption and getting people the information they needed. Here's what happened. The University of Michigan had hired our consulting company to help them with their intranet migration going from SharePoint 2007 to SharePoint 2010. We did the migration, everything went well. We brought almost everything over from the older intranet, and I say almost everything because we brought over everything that we thought was useful as well as what the university thought was needed. The search analytics were turned on to analyze exactly what people were searching for on the intranet, but no one looked at those search analytics until 2 months had passed by. Then, when the university personnel looked at it and our team looked at exactly what people were searching for, lo and behold, the top search that people were doing, there was no answer for that on the intranet. There was a huge volume of that search, and for that top query, unfortunately, there was no information, there was no result for that on the new intranet. Want to guess what that is? It was a cafeteria menu. People wanted to know what was on the cafeteria menu for the day, which they could easily find on the older intranet that we migrated from. But unfortunately, none of us thought to put that information on the new intranet. So unfortunately, many users on the intranet were disappointed the last 2 months when they were looking for that cafeteria menu, which they could easily find on the older intranet, and could not find that information on the new intranet. That's a big fail. We failed to make sure to provide users the information they needed and what they were finding easily on the older system as we planned out the new system. I hope you take that as a lesson of what not to do. You always want to provide information on the intranet or anywhere else for that matter that your users care about, that they will come for, not only the information that you care about getting to them. How do you get people to your intranet? How do you get them to care to actually come over there? Well, there is an option of bringing your intranet to your users by using something called Viva Connections. Viva Connections is actually free from Microsoft. You just talk to your admin. They will be able to, or if you're the admin, just look for Viva Connections on the web. It's just an app that you use to show the intranet, preferably the home site of your SharePoint intranet, but it could be any communication site. You show that directly within Teams and preferably as the first tab. So in this case, this is the actual Microsoft internal intranet that is shown to Microsoft employees when they come to Teams. Here's an example of Viva Connections in action at our VisualSP. Now this is a demo site, it's not the actual intranet, but I just wanted to show you that you could set it up where the first tab, the first icon people see and the page they see is the actual live intranet. And that's directly within Microsoft Teams. So that's one way of doing that, getting your intranet to get used by users because it's there where they're coming every day, Microsoft Teams. Let me tell you a story about Sony Corporation. They had a user adoption issue as well for their current intranet that they had that they were trying to replace. Not many users were coming to their intranet and their adoption was very low. So Sony had our team come over to help launch their new intranet. The personnel at Sony were very well aware that they needed to make sure their intranet launch and subsequent usage of the intranet is successful. Otherwise, what's the point? So in order to make all this happen, they needed to be intentional about this rollout. Before they even begin the rollout, they started planning and figuring out exactly how they could get people to the intranet once it was rolled out. They knew that one of their main pain points for their user base, which was very much in motion, very much transitory, their pain point in San Diego office was that they had to print their documents and whatever else they wanted to print to the nearest printer. It was all wireless printing, and you had to connect to the nearest printer at your location to be able to print your important documents. And there was always problems. People were always complaining about it, always struggling, coming to IT about this issue. So the IT team that was in charge of rolling out this new SharePoint-based intranet, they researched, they found this utility that lets you perform a one-click print to the nearest printer. It literally just had one button in the middle of this utility that lets you connect automatically to the nearest printer. That's it. Could not get easier than that. However, this IT team, they waited to roll out this utility until the first day of the intranet launch, where they put this utility on the top right of the intranet, just like this over here. Find the nearest printer web part or connect to the nearest intranet, nearest printer web parts. Simple. Okay, and before the launch happened, they were hyping this functionality up for weeks with their user base, saying that this is what's coming. They even had posters of Spider-Man around the office. By the way, Sony owns the trademark for Spider-Man. That's why they could do that. So Spider-Man was there on the walls, hawking the new intranet that's coming, about the new functionality that's coming, getting everybody excited. So guess what? Once the new intranet was rolled out, everyone who needed to use the utility ended up on the intranet, and it worked beautifully. But the team didn't stop there. What they also did was they somehow got their CEO at the time to commit to making a weekly message, and that weekly message went right here on the bottom left, but still above the fold on their intranet. So people are coming in now to use the nearest printer connectivity web part, and they were sticking around for the CEO's weekly message. Who wouldn't? They would get that, they spread the word, the adoption was growing. This team, super important, super very, very smart people, they didn't stop there. They started putting additional messages that they knew were important, like right here and here, so above and below these other web parts. All these important, really good messages that people, were wanted to see anyway. They saw them there. So now you come to the intranet and you see the intranet has that nearest printer web part. Great. You stay for the CEO's weekly message because you want to know what the CEO is thinking. Wonderful. And then you stick around for other information that's there. Mission accomplished. They had lots of great adoption right out of the gate, and it just got better and better over time. Now, how do you get your users oriented to your new intranet? Right, once it's released, you can make orientation videos. Right, orientation videos giving them a tour of the site. I have a few of these actually in the slide deck. I'm gonna go ahead and play about a minute of this one so you can watch exactly what an orientation video would look and sound like. Here we go.
Welcome to the new employee portal for Food Bank of Eastern Oklahoma. This is your place to reserve meeting rooms and vehicles, access the HR portal, and submit departmental requests or maintenance tickets. Let's explore. The homepage features the latest announcements and events going on at the food bank and links to our Twitter feed. Clicking an announcement or event will bring up more information. The right side of the page features links to external websites that food bank employees commonly use, such as HungerNet, Paycom, and Agency Express, as well as links to departmental SharePoint hubs like agency services.
All right, so this is a very long, well, not very long, but still about 5-6 minutes video. My usual recommendation is to keep it with 2-3 minutes. That's where people start losing interest, unfortunately. So you want to keep it short, but still, this is a very good video that you can put out for people to really get an understanding of what's in it for them, why they should come to the intranet. In this slide deck, if you download the slide deck, there's actually a few of these here that you'll see. And hopefully it'll be good examples for you as you think about making your own orientation videos. The question here comes up, how do you effectively train your users on SharePoint? So let's talk about that. I'm going to relay a story, my own personal story about an experience I had in my hometown of Chicago back in 2009. I was invited to teach a 2-day end users class. It was in my hometown. It was by the Chicago River in downtown, a beautiful location. This organization that invited me, their business was providing secondary educational institutions like colleges, universities with insurance. Okay. I taught this class to these end users, 30 people over a 2-day period. It's a SharePoint focused class, so I taught them everything that they needed to know as an end user in SharePoint. So basic stuff like how to use pages, lists, libraries, setting up permissions, web parts. I showed them exact clicks as to here's what you need, here's where you would click, here's how you would do it. Right? The second day ended. The lady who had hired me asked me if I could stay one more day. They would pay me for that third day. And the reasoning would be that, hey, if you stay in this nice corner office we have available, if there's any questions from these users, from these attendees of the class, they could ask you questions. So I thought, easy enough. I mean, I taught them everything that they needed to know, every single click, but there would not be that many questions. Well, I was very, very wrong about that because the next day there was a line out the door of people with questions. Questions about how they get their job done specifically using the technology that I just taught them about using SharePoint. So now I was explaining to them one by one and showing them exact clicks that I showed them the last 2 days. So, for example, one of the ladies came and her boss had told her that there were these pictures that they had taken from the picnic that happened, and these pictures needed to go up in SharePoint. So she came to me, she said, I know you talked about a concept of picture library in SharePoint, but I don't remember how to do it step by step. What steps should I take? So I showed her that here's how you make a new picture library, upload the pictures, here's how you make them into thumbnails, and then share this library with others, with your colleagues. After the end of these kind of questions that I got again and again from people asking me exactly how things were done, I felt pretty ashamed. I felt that I was a horrible teacher because I did not do a good job teaching in these last 2 days if they don't remember anything I taught them. But then I realized much later that it's not really me in that case. My expectations were wrong. I expected them to remember every click I taught them. And with them being end users of the technology, they were really focused on not the technology, but their job as insurance experts, as what they did. They were not technologists, right? They just wanted to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish using this SharePoint technology. So my experience taught me this, that end users really don't want to be trained. They want to be helped. They want their life to be easier using the technologies that they have on hand. Doesn't matter which technology, they're not really passionate about something specifically as long as, unless it helps them do their job. That's the lessons I learned, to empower them, not to rote train them. The traditional training does not work for end users. Thoroughly training end users just does not work. Traditional classroom, binge learning, that's not the best way. That's not a good way at all to teach end users. We're not preparing these employees to take a test. We're preparing them to help them do their job, not to memorize every click. Users just cannot be forced to make things they don't want to do. And you definitely don't want to force them because that's not the right kind of measure you want to take. The good thing is there are many different diverse training and support methods that you can utilize. For example, self-help resources and virtual training, in-person training. You have chain champions that you can have who can help you, help desk support personnel, micro-learning tips and tricks. So a lot of different things you can use to your advantage as diverse training and support methods. And there's a bunch of these things, much more in detail in these slides. I won't go through every single bullet point here, but as you can see, for each of these things, self-help resources, virtual training, in-person training, chain champions, there's lots of detailed information about exactly what it would look like. Help desk support, tips, micro-learning, and then of course buzz days. You can have these days as well with live events and other kinds of things to help people. Let's talk about some support resources that exist for you from Microsoft. You have the Microsoft Learn, Microsoft Docs, and techcommunity.microsoft.com as a forum where you can ask questions. In my humble opinion, please remember these things are for you as the person who is supporting your users. If you send your users directly to either of these things, that's going to be overwhelming for most end users, unless they are very motivated, empowered, unless they are power users. They don't get that much out from these sources. What is helpful as support resource for your users is a Microsoft support site. So that's support.microsoft.com. And since we're talking about SharePoint, there is the specific SharePoint site as well. But at support.microsoft.com, they have support resources for everything, not just SharePoint, but the whole entire stack of Microsoft 365, and then beyond that, Dynamics, Power Apps, Power Platform as a whole. One of the things that's going to help you train, support your users is something called Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways. It's self-help. Microsoft provides it completely automated. It's a learning portal. It's created as a SharePoint communication site within your own Microsoft 365 tenant. And within that, you'll have learning content, end user specific learning content. So a lot of the base type of content for OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, Stream, all kinds of stuff, Planner, and much more. Okay, and it's all automatically updated. So that's the coolest thing. You don't have to do it. Let Microsoft take care of it. You just, uh, put up the site, put up the information directly within your portal, and then everything is updated automatically, or as I like to say, automagically. And the awesome thing is you can put your own training content from your organization into this portal as well, if you wanted to. Yeah. But keep in mind, this is an open source solution. It's created by Microsoft, and it is not a product. You take the responsibility once you take it on to update it, well, to keep things in good condition over there. But of course, the content is automatically updated, which is cool. It's free from Microsoft, so that's pretty cool. Now, there is another way to provide the same learning pathways content, but delivered in context. What I mean by that is that if I'm in Microsoft Planner as a user, I see content in Planner that is just about Planner, nothing else. As an overlay directly there. Same thing for SharePoint, Stream, or anything else. Here's what it looks like. Let's say I'm in SharePoint. I can see a flyout that I can, have available like this, which talks about just SharePoint specific topics that I would care about, nothing else. All coming from Microsoft Learning Pathways. Same thing here. If I'm in OneDrive, content only about OneDrive, nothing else. Pretty cool stuff. I think so. This is free from VisualSP, which is our company. So if you do want that, visualsp.com/learning-pathways. When you go there, you'll see all of this content. Well, what you'll see is information about exactly how do you get this system. Once you get the system, it becomes automatically an overlay on top of your environment, and it just provides this content automatically to your users. So pretty cool stuff. You should try it out. Let me give you a demo of what Microsoft Learning Pathways looks like. Just a brief demo. There's a whole lot more on YouTube that you'll find from myself, Asif Rahmani, and you'll find it from other people as well. So here we go. If I set up a site like this one, a SharePoint communication site, which has all of the Microsoft Learning Pathways content, which, by the way, even the site itself is automatically provisioned if you just follow the information on Microsoft Learning Pathways, which you'll find on the web. Anyway, so a user comes to this site, they go to Microsoft 365 training, and the content you'll see right, or they will see right there for all the different products that they work with. Microsoft Forms, Lists, SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, etc. So basic stuff that I want to know about, let's say Excel, basic but things that I forget as a user, pivot tables and link tables and data types and all that stuff. I can just go in here, click on what I'm looking for, gives me the content right there. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Once again, all the content is updated or kept updated by Microsoft, so very nice to have that. In addition to just having this content on this site, you can actually take all this content and put it on a different site as well. So it doesn't have to be just on the Learning Pathways communication site. You can put it on your site too. That's pretty cool. Now I also want to show you what's free from VisualSP, where how you can put this thing in context of Microsoft Learning Pathways in context of your applications for the users. So let's say I'm in SharePoint. I'm looking at a SharePoint communication site. This happens to be the intranet, let's say, of our organization. Here's the tab on the bottom right, which, by the way, can be anywhere. Let's say it's here. I click on this as a user, and I see all the content as a flyover here with everything that makes sense for the intranet or for specifically for this page. So I got some onboarding tasks that I need to complete. Go through the intranet homepage tour, for example, and this happens to be a guide, a walkthrough that's walking me through this whole site. By the way, this was created without any code using the VisualSP system. Here we go, highlighting the left bar, showing me this is the app bar, etc. A lot of good stuff here. Okay, so I've done this thing as a user. I could do additional things. For example, look at this thing as a tip sheet, understanding how to add a page to your site, and it's showing that I've done this, I've done that. So these are onboarding tasks. I can also look for things that I care about, right? Like, okay, recycle bin. There you go. Quickly gives me information that I need to know, and I move on. So that's the context-sensitive way of providing information. You could do the same exact thing, or you would have the same exact thing, not just for SharePoint, but for all different applications. The tab shows information that is specific to the application that the user is looking at. We think that's pretty cool. Check it out, the URL that I provided earlier. It's free for everybody. Let me talk about context for a moment. Context is what we need to focus on, not just the content. What I mean by that is that access to content, to getting content, is not a challenge. I can just pick up my phone, so can our kids, young or old, doesn't matter. Anybody can just pick up their phone, voice in Google, Siri, or type in the query to get their answer. Very, very easy, but you need to know what to look for. What is the context? And that's the challenge. In the context that I'm working in, let's say I'm a machine worker and I need something specific to this particular machine that I'm looking at. How do I get that information? Let's say I'm a knowledge worker looking at Workday or Salesforce or whatever, ServiceNow, SharePoint, and I'm looking at something specific and I need information about that is specific to my company. Well, I can't just type in that information on the web and get the answer. Context is very, very important, right? That's what I mean by this here. When we're delivering information, We want to deliver it in context, as I mentioned. Doesn't matter if it's information generic in nature, support specific information, governance, policies, whatever it is, you want to deliver that in context. Yeah, not a large governance document that no one's going to look at anyway. You want to instead offer contextual experiences directly where the person is. Doesn't matter if it's physical, virtual, whatever, the information is right there. If I'm in a web application, I should see informational elements, icons, links, whatever, which tells me what I need to know at that moment of my need. If I'm a factory worker working on a big machine, I get the information right there on a label on the machine, which tells me what I need to know. Also referred to as performance support. Okay. Here's an example of something that's delivered contextually. So I'm looking at a banner here, a yellow banner, which says register to company summer event that's coming up. Click on this link for more information. This particular banner you can create using a project that's on GitHub, free from Microsoft. You can grab that from GitHub, that project, and there's link to that project, by the way, in the PowerPoint. So if you get the PowerPoint for this presentation, you can grab that. And yeah, you just put it up on your intranet and you'll have the capability to do this. Now, it is rudimentary, it's not schedulable and all that stuff, but still it does work. Okay. A better option is a scheduled banner on SharePoint with CTA, something like that. So you can control the width, the size, the information. You can have images in there, links, buttons, and you can schedule it. You can target it to specific people. This functionality is not free, but it's from VisualSP. So you can find that on VisualSP and how you can get a banner like this thing. So either go with the free one or go with this one. But either way, this is one of the possible contextual experience you can provide to your users when they are looking for information, right? In this case, it's saying do not upload any document that contains credit card or social security numbers. And here's more information about it. So when somebody has seen it, you will know exactly who has seen it from the analytics of the system. So then you are covering yourself or your company from any issues with regulation and so forth. Now, the idea for implementing contextual support and training for users, there's a specific formula that you want to follow. It's called delivering, well, it's for delivering information to your users within 2 clicks, 10 seconds. The reason for that, by the way, I did not make this up. This was an actual study published by a strategist, learning strategist named Dr. Conrad Gottfriedson, who has proved that if you are able to do this thing, if you're able to get information to users within 2 clicks, within 10 seconds, this experience creates a positive emotion, yes, of satisfaction in the amygdala. And this feeling of satisfaction and pride that the user gets, it encourages them to try the self-support option again the next time they need help. So super important to keep this formula in mind. And overall, you want to create the necessary support infrastructure for your intranet to thrive. So anytime a user is stuck or need help, need support, need training, they have the information right there on hand. But before you do any of that, make sure you have at least one executive sponsor that's backing you up. You need that person to have your back, basically, to put it bluntly. If you don't have executive sponsor, please get one. Could be a director, VP, or a C-level executive if it's a SMB, but somebody who can truly be behind you with your efforts. Otherwise, when you turn around and there's nobody behind you from the executive branch, it's very, very difficult. It's an uphill battle to get transformation. And that's what this data proves also over here from McKinsey and Company. Success of your digital transformation depends on having an executive sponsor. And since we're talking about SharePoint specifically, having a SharePoint champions community really helps. You can get your champions to sign up for the Microsoft-led community if you want, which is this link right here, aka MS0265 Champions, so they can be part of that community. Or you can have your own community also internally. Okay. Either way, you want to make sure that this committee of these champions is basically sending out regular communications, having peer-to-peer networking among people. You can, of course, partner directly with Microsoft with this champions community, and the subject matter experts at Microsoft would help you with creating the content that you would need internally. So either way. Now, a big thing to keep in mind, how do you know what your users are actually doing on your intranet? Is it working or not? Are you getting the ROI that you want? Very important. For that, you can have a dashboard like this that monitors, for example, SharePoint Analytics regularly and reports on it. Right? So in this case, this is a dashboard using Power BI, by the way, which is giving me information in January 2021, how many sites were active and so forth, and then users and so forth. Right? You get this template for Power BI, and it provides you the whole thing for Microsoft 365, and then you can drill into SharePoint if you want, just like that here. Here's a working copy of the Microsoft 365 Usage Analytics with drill down into SharePoint specifically. So it's showing January 2021, how many active sites. And if I go into and hover over any of these things, it's showing me that in April, I've had 212 active files, 122 pages viewed, 54 files shared internally, 20 files synced. Good data that I want to have, right? Additional data in here as well that I can get for enabled versus active users and so forth. So check this out, and you can do that for other products as well. Once again, the way you want to get this, just go and research Power BI, Microsoft 365 Usage Analytics. If you just type that in, you'll get this template. As long as you have access to Power BI, you can implement this dashboard for any of the Microsoft 365 applications or all of them, and have good data, much better data than what you get directly within SharePoint, right? I'm putting a link to this product also, or this facility, in the slide deck. So if you get the slide deck, the link will be there. You also want to understand things a lot more clearly. Uh, you could do that with Microsoft Clarity. This product that not many people know about, a completely free product actually, you can deploy to, let's say, a SharePoint site or your complete tenant, and it will give you heat maps, click rankings, usage recording of actual usage that's happening on your intranet. Very cool stuff. Here's a depiction of a demo site. In this case, it's showing the 1, 2, 3, 4 ranking on a SharePoint site. There's not that much data here, but usually you would see heat maps and all kinds of stuff within a dashboard for Microsoft Clarity once you deploy it. Here's an example of a heat map in Microsoft Clarity. I think this does a pretty good job explaining exactly what Clarity does and why it's so powerful. So I have Clarity deployed. In this case, through using VisualSP, we have deployed it to SharePoint. Okay. So in the SharePoint site directory for the tenant, it's showing me the user clicks. Here's a couple of clicks. There's one click over here, click, click, and it's also showing rankings of where people are clicking as well. So I got the rankings, I got the heat map, right, with all these uh, heat areas, basically. And then also there's recordings if you want. If I go to recordings, hopefully it will show me some recordings here as well as what my users are doing. And it actually shows the mouse movements, the clicks, the behavior of my users. Super helpful. Microsoft Clarity by itself is completely free. We do have a service agreement through VisualSP. If we do it, for you to Clarity, we can help you analyze the data and so forth. There's a little bit of cost to that, or you can use it yourself also and deploy it to some of the sites in SharePoint and other places. So either way, pretty helpful in my opinion. Check it out. I think you will really like it. Here's me again that you've been listening to, Asif Rahmani. Reach out to me if you like, asif@visualsp.com. And if you have any questions, thoughts, want to discuss something about context-sensitive support and training for your users, or anything else you want to talk about in regards to that theme, you can also check out our site, VisualSP. As I mentioned before, it's a digital adoption platform for all web applications, not just SharePoint, but all of your web applications. Okay. If you want to download the slide deck that I've been showing over here, here's a QR code for that. Okay. You can also go just to bit.ly ASIF conference, fill out a quick form, and you'll get access to this slide deck and everything else that we have to offer. Thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed the presentation.